Hello, and welcome to the video guide for the Dreamlab tutorial. First, let's take a tour of the editor UI. On the upper left-hand corner, you've got the scene graph, which is basically just a list of all of the objects in your game. You can double-click on any entity to open its children, and when you select something, you can see that it gets highlighted in the world with a transformation gizmo, allowing you to modify it. The scene graph is split into 4 routes. The first is world. These are objects that exist on every client as well as the server. So if you're building a multiplayer game, this is where you're going to want to put most of your stuff. Whenever anything in the world changes, those changes propagate to every client as well as the server. Then we have the local tree. These only exist on a specific player's client. So this is a good place to put things that you want every player to have a copy of, such as the camera or a user interface component. Then we have the server route. These are, you probably guessed, things that only exist on the server. No player will be able to see these. And then we have the prefabs route, which are reusable objects, and these are only visible if one of them are selected. And more on that later. Under that, we'll have the project panel. These are all of the files in your project, things like image files or scripts. You can double-click any file to open it in the script editor. Then, on the right-hand side, we have the properties panel. These show the properties of whatever object you're currently selecting. You can do things like enable or disable it. You can lock it, which makes it unselectable by clicking it, useful for backgrounds, as well as change values that are specific to that entity. So since this is a collider, we can turn sensor on and off, which makes it still detect collisions, but players can move through it. Underneath, we have this colored square, which has slightly different values, including a color value that we can customize. Finally, we have the behaviors panel. These are little bits of functionality. They are scripts that make your game work. So the player, for example, has this player controller script attached to it, and we can see all of the properties that are associated with that player. Now, let's explain a little bit more about how prefabs work. This prefab, for example, is our platform, and we can see that these platforms in our scene are instances of that. And we can see that because they have a special blue text. So let's say we wanted to make our platform a little bit wider, and we also wanted to give it, let's say, a nice blue color. We can make those changes to our prefab, then select our prefab, and click Update Instances. And we can see that all of the instances of the platform have changed. Now, let's test this game. You can see it's a basic platformer. You can jump with space or hold space to jump a little higher and move left and right with A and D. And we've got a coin up here, but we can't reach it. So let's modify our scene to make that the case. Let's go to our prefabs tab on the bottom, and here we can see all of the prefabs that exist in our scene. So in our case, we want to create more platforms, which can be done by just dragging the prefab into the scene. Let's create a nice amount of them to make sure we can reach our goal. And then one more there. All right, now let's try out our game. And we reach the coin, and we can see that our coin counter updated. Now, let's talk a little bit more about how behaviors and values work. If we select our player, we can see that it has these customizable options such as speed, jump force, etc. If we look at how our player normally behaves, it moves and jumps at a reasonable amount. So let's increase the speed from 20 to 40 and the jump force from 20 to 50. And so now you're going to see that the player moves a lot faster and jumps a lot higher. On any behavior, you can double-click the script name to open it up in the editor. And we can see these are the class properties that we're editing. In order to make a class property visible in the editor, all you have to do is add the synced value decorator in front of it. Not only will this make it visible in the editor, but it will also synchronize the value of this class property over the network. Now, our game is a little bit too easy, so let's add an obstacle that when the player touches it, they teleport back to the spawn point as defined here. First, we'll go into prefabs and create our new obstacle object. Right-click, new entity, and we'll create a collider as the base. And we'll name it obstacle. Then, so the player can see it, we'll create a child of type colored square, and we'll give it a nice red color so that the player knows to stay away from it. Now it'll show up in our prefabs panel, and we can just drag them right into the level. If we start our game up, you can see that touching this obstacle doesn't do anything. In fact, it works just like a normal platform. And that's because it's just a naked collider with no behavior script attached to it. So to make this collider actually do something, we're going to have to write our first behavior script. Navigate to the Scripts tab by clicking the button in the upper left-hand corner. Then right-click the source folder and select New Behavior. We're going to call our script Obstacle. We've got this default boilerplate, so we're going to clear out this synced value. We don't need it, and we also don't need to be running anything every tick. We're also going to rename our behavior to be called Obstacle. Now, we're going to create a method that gets called every single time this obstacle collides with something. We're going to call this onCollide, and it's going to take a single argument of type entity collision. When you get the red squiggles, you can just mouse over it and press Quick Fix to update your imports. Then, in the collision listener, we're going to log out the other, which is the thing that we're colliding with, .name. Now we need to tell the engine to send collision events to this method. The way that we can do this is by creating a handler in the onInitialize function. So we're going to change this to onInitialize client because we only need this to be running on the client, not both the client and the server. And we're going to call this dot register collisions and pass in this dot onCollide. Now, whenever anything collides with any entity that this behavior is attached to, we're going to log out the name of the thing that it's colliding with. Let's go back to our editor, and we're going to select our obstacle prefab, and we're going to drag this obstacle script into the behaviors. Now we're going to click Update Instances, and the obstacles that we've already put in the level also will have this script attached. Now when we start it up and we touch it, we can see in our logs, we get the player entity's name logged out. Now we just need to make it actually teleport the player back to player spawn point. In order to do that, we're going to write some more code inside this onCollide method. First, we're going to say if e.started, which means it's the beginning of this collision event, and e.other, meaning the entity that we're colliding with, has the behavior player controller. Basically, this checks, did we collide with a player? And if we did, we're going to create a new variable to store that player entity, and we're going to set it to e.other.cast character controller. And this is because the player has an entity type of character controller. As you can see right here, it's of type character controller as indicated by this little running guy icon. Now we need to teleport it back to the beginning. So what we can do is just say player.position is equal to this.game.world.player spawn point dot position. And then we're also going to say player.teleport equals true, which allows the player to ignore any colliders. So this isn't going to work. And here's why. The player controller and this tick function and this code, the order that these run in is not guaranteed. So in order to make this actually work, we need to wait until the beginning of the next tick. We can do this by saying this.game.time.wait for next tick, then, and pass it a function, and we can actually teleport our player inside here. Now we save this and play our game, and when we touch these obstacles, we get teleported right back to the beginning of the level. As a final exercise, let's add some more obstacles and also add some more coins to the level. You can copy and paste an entity with Control-C and Control-V, which makes it very easy to duplicate multiple instances of something throughout a level. So I'm going to put an obstacle here, and you can also hold Shift in order to snap a line to nearby things. And I'm just going to put some obstacles on the middle of platforms and just in places that is kind of inconvenient. And then I'm also going to adjust the position of this platform a little bit. And then I'm also going to take this coin and we're going to create some more coins. And now let's play the final game. We collect coins and the coin counter updates. If we touch an obstacle, we get teleported back to the beginning. So let's complete our level nice and carefully. And we got all 4 coins. And that concludes the Dreamlab tutorial. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to join our Discord and let us know.